Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a really dynamic devotional note that captures one of the most pivotal, history-altering nights ever recorded, the events of Mark chapter 14. We're going to unpack the incredibly intense trial of Jesus, the devastating, very human failure of one of his closest friends, and how it all ties together through a really profound visual metaphor. So buckle up because we're going to break down some heavy human emotions and absolutely incredible theological truths today. To ground us, we're looking at a piece of artwork that, at first glance, just kind of looks like a swirling, chaotic vortex, right? And lots of energetic strokes of blue, purple, and orange. But as our source material reveals, this is way more than just an abstract sketch. It actually maps out the total chaos of Jesus' trial and the tragic reality of human weakness found in Mark 14, verses 53 through 72. The artist literally took complex, heavy text and condensed the persecution, the failure, and the ultimate grace of that freezing night into one sweeping visual. All right, let's dive into part 1, Witness in the Vortex. Which brings us right into part 2, the chaos of unbelief. So we start at the very outermost edges of this vortex, the realm of pure unbelief. The source describes how the chief priests and the entire Sanhedrin, the ancient Jewish high court, were frantically scrambling to find any testimony to put Jesus to death. But they were coming up completely empty. Why? Because the people they kept bringing forward were just making up false claims. Their stories were completely conflicting, and the whole scene was just engulfed in total confusion. Even when people stood up to falsely claim he said he'd destroy the temple and rebuild it, their stories still didn't match up. It was literally a whirlwind of lies. But what's really fascinating here is the reaction to all that noise. The high priest stands up in the middle of this absolute circus and asks Jesus if he's going to answer these accusations. And faced with this storm of lies, Jesus gives absolutely no answer. He doesn't defend himself. He doesn't argue back. Which prompts a really profound question for us to chew on. Why stay totally silent when you're facing such aggressive, fabricated attacks? Well, the devotional offers a deeply spiritual insight here. It suggests that this silence wasn't a sign of defeat, and it definitely wasn't a lack of a defense. Actually, scratch that. It was more like a merciful pause. The silence proves that God has a merciful heart of love. He was waiting, giving space for grace to unfold, patiently enduring all that chaos so the ultimate plan of salvation could be brought to us. Now let's move into part 3, the fearless declaration. So the silence doesn't last forever. The high priest finally asks a direct, pointed question. Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One? And Jesus' answer cuts right through the chaos with a fearless, absolute declaration of his true identity. The crucial point is, why break the silence right then? Well, because this wasn't about fake accusations regarding a building anymore. This was about his core identity. It was time for the witness of faith, totally unafraid of death. He breaks his silence with just 2 words, I am. But those 2 words pack a massive theological punch. He brilliantly merges 3 monumental Old Testament scriptures into one ultimate revelation. He invokes Exodus 3:14, the very name of God, I am. He references Daniel 7:13, talking about the Son of Man arriving on the clouds. And he caps it off with Psalm 110:1, declaring he'll be seen sitting at the right hand of power. In just a couple of words, he is claiming ultimate divine authority right to the faces of the people trying to execute him. No fear whatsoever. The author actually jots this down as a kind of visual math for the messianic mystery. The messenger of God plus the servant of God plus the Son of God equals God himself. This fearless declaration proves he's the victorious Savior. While the world is literally spinning in unbelief around him, he remains the absolute anchor in the center of the trial. Let's shift gears to part 4, Tragedy of Human Weakness. Meanwhile, cut to the courtyard outside, we find our third witness, warming himself by the fire, Peter. A servant girl spots him and points out that he was with Jesus of Nazareth. Now don't miss this. Our source text points out that the word with here isn't just about standing next to someone. Back in Mark chapter 3, Jesus appointed the 12 specifically so they might be with him. It's the core identity of a disciple. To be a disciple is, at its root, to be with Jesus. Confronted with that core identity, Peter completely collapses. It's a rapid, tragic, downward spiral in 3 painful steps. First, he just deflects. I don't know or understand what you're talking about. Then, when pointed out again, he flat out denies it. Finally, pure panic takes over. He starts cursing and swearing, yelling, "I don't know this man." He completely and utterly abandons his identity out of sheer fear. And right then, the rooster crows for the second time. The source notes that in that exact split second, Peter remembers what Jesus had told him. Reality crashes down. He's crushed by his own massive failure and begins to weep bitterly, hitting absolute rock bottom in his own personal vortex of fear and regret. Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the core of grace. Think back to that artwork we talked about at the beginning, specifically that bright orange-red core right in the middle of all those dark purple and blue lines. The devotional asks us to ponder, what does that warm color actually represent? Is it Peter's burning, bitter tears of regret? Or is it something totally different? The brilliance of this devotional is how it reveals what that center truly is. If we're relying on ourselves, the center of that vortex is just an abyss of fear. It's all judgment, human failure, and spiraling panic. But that's not what the orange-red core is. It's actually a channel of grace. It represents Christ's all-seeing, perfectly forgiving gaze. Jesus saw Peter's massive failure before it even happened, and yet he still offered total acceptance. And you know, that realization transforms the entire picture. It's a light of inclusive love that sees through absolutely everything. It's such an amazing reminder that even when we are incredibly weak, even when we completely fail and deny our identity like Peter did, Christ still knows us deeply. He sees the absolute worst in our spiraling chaos, and he still chooses to accept us and strengthen us with his grace. It's a real game changer. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, absolutely vital question to chew on today. When you face your own personal failures, when life feels completely chaotic and you know you've fallen short, which core are you actually looking at? Are you staring into a terrifying vortex of your own fear and judgment? Or are you looking into the warm, all-seeing, totally forgiving gaze of grace? Because honestly, what you choose to focus on changes everything. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive today.